You know that chewy layered guitar tone from Hotel California, or maybe Life in a Fast Lane? It wasn't just from amplifiers or fingers. There was a secret circuit behind it that helped the feel of the guitar tone. And today we're building it from a cheap kit that you could buy for less than £40. No skipping, no shortcuts, just pure DIY. And what do we have here? This is everything we're going to need to create the Fuzz Dogs Bee Juice V2. And that is a clone of the Honeybee. Now this is a real interesting pedal, but let's start off with the enclosure. So this is aged mermaid green. I love the colour, but check out the artwork. Can anyone tell me who they are? The Illegal Eagles. They're an awesome band. They absolutely inspired this video. Quick story before I dive into this fun build. You may notice my t-shirt. Well, this t-shirt is from a band called the Illegal Eagles. They're an Eagles tribute band that me and Glyn, my father-in-law, went to see in Portsmouth Guildhall this year. They were fantastic, amazing. It was such a good show. But I can't even believe I'm admitting this on camera. But the funniest thing happened. So during a halftime show, they sell t-shirts like this one. And we couldn't find a merch store. We ended up at the bar instead, like we always do. And so when we sat down, I hadn't bought a t-shirt, but I didn't intend to buy one. And we were talking away, the show starts again. And the bass player comes out and says, what he actually says was, who in the audience bought the guitar t-shirt from the merch store? And what I heard was, guitar t-shirt. And I went, woo, me, yeah. And they went, stand up and let me see your t-shirt. And I was like, what the hell? What are you talking about? And of course I didn't buy the t-shirt because I couldn't find a store. I had every intention of buying one, but I just hadn't bought one at that point. And so the whole crowd starts telling me to stand up. But of course I haven't bought the t-shirt. And so then the bass player goes, fire, and then moves on. It was hilarious. Everyone was giving me hell. And I felt about this big, and it was just so funny. Afterwards, me and Glyn just couldn't stop laughing about it. And I did go and buy this very t-shirt because I love guitars and I wanted to support the band, of course. But just for one fun thing, and now I've made a pedal. Hopefully I can get it to the Illegal Eagles, and hopefully they remember that story. I know that's like one show in a million or whatever, and they probably don't remember. But it was just hilarious. I was sat right at the front as well. It's like second row back. Anyway, now let's get on to the guitar build. But if you want to support the Hello Sailor Effects channel, you can buy some of my t-shirts or caps and random merch below. Thank you. Let's move on and see what comes in this kit. Actually, some of you may be thinking, hang on a minute, Joe. The Honeybee only had 3 controls. So it had drive, volume and tone. Why did your pedal, let's take a look. Why did your pedal have these extra 2 controls at the top? Well, stay tuned because I've got some awesome Hello Sailor mods that we're going to do to this kit, just to give it a bit of an extra twist. Of course, with the Fuzz Dog kits, you do get some cable free with the kit. I suppose you buy it. I'm not going to use that cable because I like the silicone wire that I use. I'm going to use the jacks because if you remember from our Phase 90 kit, they were amazing. And same with the stomp switch. I'm pretty certain they're made in the same factory as the ones I get. They certainly feel like it. Here we have all of our capacitors, resistors, LEDs, and the pots, which are all alpha pots by the look of it. Yeah, spot on. Good quality. We're going to use all of that. Battery snap. No one wants that in a pedal. We're getting rid of the battery snap. You don't need it unless you're building some sort of germanium fuzz. That's not happening. And again, look at the cool colour of this PCB. I love this. But again, this stomp switch thing, I can't use them. I can't figure them out. It's not for me. I prefer to just wire straight to the stomp switch. And here's the PCB. It says Bee Juice .2. I can't even get my words out there. Bee Juice V2.0. Not too many components on this one. We've only got one IC, so it should be relatively plain sailing. These PCBs are so well made. Look how thick that is. It's a beast. Let's get on to what documentation we get with it. This is the documentation you get. You don't get it with the kit. You have to print it out yourself because why waste paper if you don't need to? I'm sure most of you guys will just use your phone or something. But this is what we get. So first we get a schematic. Then we get all of the parts we're going to need. A picture of the PCB to show you how it's laid out. And then some words about it. I'm not going to read. Of course I'm not. That tells you how to wire up the input and output. We'll go through that my own way as usual. And it also shows you how to wire it up without that little PCB board. I love this. Most kits just assume that you're going to use all of their boards. Not Fuzzdog, they're very diligent. And they also give you the all-important drilling template. I don't use it because I tend to use larger enclosures, extra mods and all that jazz. But I think it's fantastic that they include this. And it is, if you print it out in A4, it's the right size. Spot on for me. Yeah, we've gone through all of that. So what do we need to talk about? The schematic, I think. Right, here we go. So this over here is the input. Come through the input and we have C1. There's also this R1 network over here. These little triangles are the two halves of our op-amp. So our op-amp is a dual operation op-amp, which means that there's one amplification on one side and another amplification on the other side, if you think about it like that. This is one section of amplification. This is another section of amplification. It says that the IC used is the OP275. I love that. NKT275, that's harking to that. I just love it. Anyway, so the OP275 dual op-amp is here. And these are the two sides of it, which makes it a dual. Now, what I want to draw attention to is the clipping. So traditionally, there's either hard clipping or soft clipping. I don't want to teach anyone to suck eggs, but I'm going to go into it as I understand it, shall I say. Firstly, we have over here an IC1A on the IC itself. On the output of the IC, it goes to C10 and then off to the circuit. But if we follow round to the loop, we have a capacitor, probably to reduce noise, high end I would imagine. We have the drive control, the gain. So what this does is, if we supply more signal back to the beginning, it's going to change the gain structure. So if you're going to cancel frequencies out or not cancel frequencies out. Simple as that. This resistor here, R6, what this is for is if you turn your drive all the way down as far as it'll go, so we're putting pin 2 all the way attached to pin 1, what will happen is you'll get no sound, kind of like a volume control. So what R6 does is set the minimum level of that drive control. So if we follow it down to R6, the minimum level is 2.7K, 2K7. And R6 also has a little asterisk next to it over here that says that it could be 3K. And it explains here that you could have 3K. Between 2.7K and 3K is literally nothing on this control. What you could do is bump this up to 200K and have more gain on the top end. So when you turn it right the way up, you're going to get more gain. However, when you turn it all the way down, your lowest gain setting is going to be more gain again. It's kind of like sliding the window across, if you like. But they've set it at 2.7K or 3K, which I'm imagining is going to be a clean tone. Now these two bits here, these diodes, D1 and D2, they are working in opposite directions. Now we've seen this before, so we know that this is clipping diodes. These are soft clipping. And the reason why they're soft clipping, like a tube screamer and smooth and overdriving and all that jazz, is because they go from the output of the op-amp round back to the input of the op-amp. Okay? So these two here, D1 and D2, which are down here, D1 and D2, put a little asterisk next to them, they are soft clipping. And that is just like a tube screamer, and all it's doing is it means that it's clipping the signal coming out of the op-amp and pushing it back into the input of the op-amp, if you like. If we follow the circuit along, we come to C10, which is a coupling cap, if you like. So C10 on here is a 1 microfarad, 1 UF. That means that they want all of the signal to pass through. They're not trying to shape the tone at this point. I mean, you could change that to, like, I don't know, a 470 NF or a 220 NF, and that would lower the bass of the pedal. I'm not going to do that, but you could. Maybe if it doesn't sound right, I will. Come along, you've got R7. Yeah, I'm imagining that to be not a high value, 2K. Yep, fine. And then we come to this curious pair of diodes. And would you believe it? This second pair of diodes are hard clipping. So they're operating in opposite directions to each other, just like our soft clipping diodes. Only this little arrow here, it's drawn as an arrow on here, but it could also be drawn as like that sort of shape. And that means earth. So they're going to ground. And if you put diodes to ground from the signal, that's hard clipping. That's like your rat. It's gainy. It's harsher. It's more distortion than overdrive in my mind. That's how I rationalize that one. So our distortion diodes are hard clipping diodes. I'm going to mark with the triangle. That is hard. And they are D3 and D4. Now our soft clipping diodes are 3mm red LEDs. Great. They're like high headroom clipping diodes. Great for soft clipping. I love them in a tube screen or something like that. And then when we come to D3 and D4, they're 1N4007s. Now these diodes are most commonly used in amplifiers. So instead of having a valve or a tube rectifier for my American friends, you could have 4 of these diodes set up to create a DC signal. They take a lot of current, a lot of power. They're very good diodes. And I personally like them in the clipping sections, especially for hard clipping. So it's no surprise that they've gone with the 1N4007s for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a different option via a 2-position switch. So one of these, a short shaft, double pole, double throw switch. And on one side of the switch, we're going to have our regular 3mm LEDs, and then flip it down and we're going to select, I don't know, maybe germanium diodes, or I'll have a look through my stash and see what I've got. But we select a different setting. And same again for the hard clipping. So we're either going to have our 1N4007s, so we can have our regular setting, or at a flip down we can change that for something different. Maybe LEDs, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it might have been cool to use LEDs and have one of them in the eagle somewhere that can light up. I'm not going to do that, but that would have been a cool thing to do. Yeah, so that's the mod that I'm going to do today. But I mean, of course, there is other mods that you could do. I think that is more than enough. That adds an extra 2 options. I'd love to know if you're planning on building this kit and if you're going to implement these simple little tweaks. I remember the first time I saw the Eagles live on the TV. Joe Walsh playing his Telecaster and Don Felder playing that double neck white Gibson guitar. And they're playing Hotel California, trading lick for lick, and it's just an awesome thing. It made me really want to learn to play guitar. It's just fantastic, so authentic. It's just, I can't even explain. That tone really had an effect on me. Especially that song, and especially the interplay between guitars. I can't teach you to play like that. No one can. It's a personal thing. But I can make a pedal to aim at that sound, to aim at that feel. And that's what we're trying today. If you like this video, and you like videos trying to recreate sounds of famous people using circuits, you want to subscribe to this channel. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed so far. We're almost at 8,000 subscribers. 8,000 subscribers in just over a year. That's fantastic. Let's get to 10 before the end of the year. Thank you. First up, I normally start with the resistors, and rightly so, but before I get there, I'm just going to add in this socket. I like to have this in place so then I can work around it. So what we need to remember, as ever, is the top of this has a little notch out of it. And on our drawing, we can see the notch. If we line them up together, that means that when I come to put my op amp in, the notch will be in the right position. Real easy. And then once this is got one of the legs soldered on, it will be like stuck to the board, and I'll be free to move it about without worrying that it's going to come out. There you go. So I'm going to go ahead and solder the rest of them in place. If you remember back to our Phase 90 build, our Eddie Van Halen Phase 90 build, I used the world's most fancy resistors straight off the bat. However, when it comes to adding the capacitors, there was no room left for me to get creative and add some cool stuff in. So with this one, I'm going to start out by using just all the resistors that come with the kit. And I'm also going to add in D6, which is on the board. It's not a clipping diode. It's a polarity protection, I believe. It's kind of resistor shaped, so it's low profile. I'm going to get that fitted too. I'm just going to work through these one at a time. And all I'll do is I'll pick a random resistor. And because I'm an absolute untrained, uneducated fool, I don't actually know what the resistor values are. not off the top of my head like some of my friends do. So all I do is I'll take my multimeter, my Fluke 101, and just read it. Now that says 0.998 ohms, so that's 1k. Little bit of tolerance, 1k. No problem. And I'm just going to go through them one at a time, measure them, and then add them in where they go. What I will say is, if you want one of these, you can get one of these from the Amazon affiliates link in the description below. No extra charge to yourself, but I do get a kickback, which really does help the show. Thank you so much to everyone who purchases things through there. It helps me buy things like these. My beloved Nipex snips, which you can also get. Now, this 1k resistor, if we look at our biometric, we can see R4 is a 1k. So all I'll do is I'll go to this, I'll scan through, see R4 is there. Then I'll bend my resistor legs down, because they're going to sit right up against the body on these, I hope. In fact, that leg hasn't really bent down. Well done, Joe. If it doesn't sit up against the body, I will do the old Ibanez method we've done before, but it does. When it's through the body, all I like to do is slide the legs out slightly. Now, I did show this in the last video, the previously mentioned Eddie Van Halen video, but how I like to solder these, okay? So wet the tip. So my solder and iron has some solder on, which helps transfer heat. Then I will put my soldering iron and my solder touching the leg of the component that I want to solder. I run them down together till they touch the pad and then take them off. So they both touch the leg, run them down together, touch the pad, take them off. Show it again on that leg because that wasn't particularly smooth. Well done, Joe. Touch the leg, slide it down, touch the pad and off. And all that means is there's not very much material on the actual pad itself and the strips of copper inside this board. So they heat up really quick when compared to the legs. Maybe not so much like a leg like this leg, but when you get to like the diode legs, the 1N4007s, they're a bit thicker, and some capacitors. When you're running the iron down the leg and the solder, you're transferring heat into it, which means that it heats up roughly the same time as the board itself. I just find that really works. I mean, if you have a different solder technique to solder them onto here, I'd love to hear it. The Navy doesn't teach you like that. They teach you to touch both pad and solder to the point at the same time. They also teach you to use a tool to clip the end of it and heatsink to hold it on and all this jazz. That just takes forever. And if you're on a warship and, you know, people's lives, essentially people's lives, or maybe something even less like people's welfare demands you to have this fixed fast, you don't want to be faffing about with, you know, heat sinks and clippers and all this jazz. You just want to get it done. So that's what I do. Anyway, resistor number 1 on, I'm going to dig into this pile. There's all of our resistors in place. Now it's time to add in D6. So D6 is a 1N4007, just like our hard clipping diodes are going to be, or one set of our hard clipping diodes are going to be, as the case may be. Now, if we look at this diode, we can see that one half of it, or one end of it, has like got a grey stripe round it, a grey band. That is the cathode, which is the negative half. That's the positive half, the anode. And now if we find D6 on here, we can see D6 here, just below the op amp. One end of it has a line on it, and also a square pad, but a line more importantly. That is telling us which end is the cathode. So we make sure the line matches up with the line. Real easy to get these the right way round, until you start moving on to them big old germaniums that John was talking about on the Pedal Dive podcast recently. Maybe we'll try and dig some of them out and I'll show you. But we can use our Fluke multimeter to measure the diodes anyway. Now, let's see. I'm going to flip this over and I'm just going to give this a solder. Now, remember, diodes are kind of heat sensitive. They're not as bad if they're not germanium. So, well, whatever. There you go. Nice and easy. And then we can give that a snip. Brilliant. And now we're moving on to the capacitors. This is an absolutely crucial part of the tone. They literally pass your signal from one part of the circuit to another. They affect it immensely. And one or two changes and one or two types of capacitor changes, and we can really shape how this pedal sounds. Now, I know that there's lots of people out there who don't believe that a certain type of capacitor has a certain type of sound. Well, I challenge you to disprove me. You go and make a decade box that switches between the exact same values, turn your amplifier up loud, that's key, and then flip through each capacitor and you'll hear subtle differences. And over the course of a pedal, changing a few of these really makes a difference. Just a little mustard cap here and a mullard cap there, and you can change your pedal from singing like Hotel California to a sound that honks like a kazoo. While I was looking at my capacitors, just getting ready for that, I did notice over here in the second half of our IC, we also have another soft clipping section here, which is D5. Now this is interesting because the other two clipping sections are symmetrical. We have one diode going one way to clip one half of our sine wave, and another diode going the other way to clip the other half of the sine wave. That's interesting. So what's different about this one? This one is one diode on its own, just clipping half of the sine wave. And can you tell which type it is? It is, of course, soft clipping. It's going from the output of our IC back round to the input. And it's a red LED. Now, on here, you can see that you have the line and then the triangle showing us which half is the positive and which half is the negative. So we have this weird drawing here, which we've looked at before, which is a line and then a triangle. Now, the way that I sort of rationalize this is I think of a non-return valve. Because I'm a mechanical engineer, I think about water flow. If we have water flowing into this valve, it's going through the positive sign and allowing it out the other side to the negative side type thing. Well, if we think of our diode, again, with another Joe H5 drawing, this is our negative side and this is our positive side. So on this drawing here, if we're taking a water analogy, water comes this way along the pipework and it hits this flat face, can't go anywhere, not allowed through. And then it's kind of like what you'll have on a ship to stop the drains coming back through, or the sea coming back into the ship when a pump isn't on, or something like that. But the water can't go that way, but it can flow that way. So same with electricity. The positive side to the negative side, that's how we imagine that electricity flows. And before anyone gets cocky and says it actually flows from negative to positive in a DC circuit, whatever. So if it'll go across the diode this way. So we can say on this part of the drawing, this side's our positive and this side's our negative. Now, if we take an LED, the positive side is longer and the negative side is shorter. So that's an easy way of telling. But also what we could do is we could take our awesome Fluke 101, let's put it this side so you can actually see it, flip it right the way around to this symbol here above the ohms, press twice, and it gives us diodes. Brilliant. Now, if I was to put my negative lead on the positive and my positive lead on the negative, I'm not getting any voltage because the diode's not letting any electricity through or any current through, whatever. If I swap the leads round, the negative to the negative and the positive to the positive, we're getting 1.74 volts. And that's what we call a forward voltage. That also tells me that the red lead is on the positive side of the LED and the black lead's on the negative. So I can tell really which way round any diode is. For example, if I reclaim this from a working machine and it only had short legs that were both the same size, I could figure out which is the positive and which is the negative. Now, we don't really need to do that yet, but we will need to later on when we start adding in all of our extra diodes. So this is labelled up as D5. If we look at our drawing here, our circuit here, we can see D5. And the square pad, as we said with our last diode, the square pad is going to be the negative side of our diode. So I'm going to put the shorter leg going to the square pad. And then if we want to just double check, we can say the shorter leg's going to the square pad, but if we follow it along, what do we come to first? C13. And if we follow along on our PCB, we actually come to C13, to the positive side of C13. Brilliant. So we know we've got that the right way around. It's kind of like a double, triple check. I mean, what do they say? Measure twice, cut once and all of that. Particularly important if you're doing damage repair on a ship and you're cutting the 2x4 timber up. So if you cut it wrong, you have to come all the way down the ship again to cut it again. Not fun. Not fun at all, I've got to say. Right, there we go. There's our LED in place. Okay, so I did say I was going to get extravagant with caps. I'm not going to get that extravagant. I am going to change some bits. So the bits I'm going to change, and the bits that I see as the important bits to change, is going to be C1, which is our input cap. So that kind of sets the EQ going into the whole pedal. And then C9, which is our output cap, setting the EQ on the way out of the pedal. And then I'm also going to change our C7, which is between the two halves of our op amp, a coupling cap in between. Now, the thinking behind it is I want to get in some of these Mullard mustard caps because I know they sound good. Now, these film caps are fairly good, you know, I'm happy with them. However, I just think this is going to add some more mojo, and that's why I want to use them. So our input and output caps, if you look at down here, so C1 is a 4.7 NF cap, and C9 is also a 4.7 NF cap. Well, I'm going to be replacing them for these 5.6 NF. I very much doubt that 0.9 NF is going to make that much difference. It's just not. I don't think it will. But having this style of cap in there, I think is going to make a difference. You may disagree, that's fine. I'd love to know in the comments if you disagree. Please articulate your reasons why. Maybe we can spark up a good discussion and maybe you'll be able to teach me something, which I'm all over. So the thinking behind if I wanted to increase the value of C1 would be to get more bass into the circuit, more frequencies, which means that there'll be more distortion because everything has to work harder. If there's more low end, it takes more energy. So I could put like a 10 microfarad cap in there and it would be really dark, get all the energy in there and then trim it off later on. That'd make it more fuzzy, woolly, grittier, whatever, potentially. I'm not going to do that. I am going to stick with roughly about the values. So 5.6 NF on both of these is increasing the value of them, but not by that much. Now, C7 is a 22 NF cap, but I'm going to use a 15 NF cap, which is going to kind of counteract the difference of these caps, really, and let more frequencies through from this op amp after this clipping through to here into the second half of the op amp. Whether you think that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't matter. But let me tell you, these caps are bloody awesome. They're what's found in the Selma Croc skin amps. I love them. I use them as much as I can when I can. So C7 is going to be one of these. For everything else though, I think I'm pretty much going to use what's there. Apart from maybe C2, it's a 100 PF cap. And I think this is the 100 PF cap. Yeah, it is. I don't really like this type of ceramic cap. I think they can be noisy. I'm just not keen on them. And I think I've got some old Hunts caps. If I can squeeze it into place, because they're rather large, but I think I've got a 100 PF Hunts cap. It's vintage, it'll sound better. And more importantly, I just don't like these caps. So, apart from that, I'm going to go ahead and just use all of the box caps that come with the kit to populate the board. Here's another interesting aspect of this build. Because I normally build with capacitors like it on the board now, either these big Hunts 100 PF caps, or we've got our mustard caps, or our Weemer Golds, stuff like that, that I know the value of, it's wrote on it clearly. I don't really understand too well these caps. Now I think this says 22 NK 100. My eyesight's going a bit, but that's what I think it says. Now I'm not 100% sure. I think that that's a 22 NF. But just to be double safe, I'm going to use my multifunction tester TC1 just to test it. I mean, it tells us that there's no leakage here, but I don't know if it's going to read ESR resistance or anything like that. But it says 22.44 NF. Banging, so I know exactly that's a 22 NF cap. These things cost next to nothing. And if you want one, again, there'll be a link to it in the description. The exact one that I use, I'll get a small kickback through Amazon. No extra charge to yourself. Well, that for a seamless plug. Well, I know now that that's a 22 NF cap. C4 is a 22 NF cap. So all I have to do now is look at our board, go right next to that Hunts cap where I've made life difficult for myself. I can squeeze this in here, bend the legs out slightly, and then solder it in place, and that's C4 sorted. But more than that, Rather than trying to search the internet and look up, you know, tables and charts to tell you what value is what, I can know for exactly that this is 22.44 NF. It's like, I mean, some people will say, these aren't that accurate. Okay, they're not that accurate. But if I use this all the time, I'm making an accurate sort of guess. Is it a guess? No, it's an educated guess. So if I always use this and a 22 NF cap sounds a certain way to me, it will always sound a certain way to me because I'm always using this tester. The idea is to get the sound that I want, and this is giving me an idea. As long as I don't keep switching machines and using different techniques to test, I can just use this all the time and I get an idea. So before someone puts the facetious comment in there saying that they're not that accurate, it is accurate because I always use it and that's my datum. Brilliant. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these caps in place. Now we're on to the electrolytic caps. Same thing. I'm just going to pick up any old cap that's in the kit, look through and see this one says 22 UF. So if we go over to our drawing, we can see that C11 was a 22 UF electrolytic. So C11's in this bottom corner here, and I can see the plus goes on the uppermost side, the square pad, and the negative goes to the bottom. Now, this happens to have the negative marked on it because there's a band around it, but it also has the long leg for the positive, short leg for the negative. So I can just orientate that the right way round, push it down, bend the legs out ever so slightly like every other part we've done so far, and then we can just solder that in place. Give it a little snip. Right, now we're good to go with that cap. We can go through and just populate the rest of them. Here's an interesting thing. On here, we only have C14 and then it jumps to C16, 100 microfarad electrolytic. We have 100 microfarad electrolytic. It's not on this drawing anywhere, and I can't see it on the PCB. The only thing left is C15. So what is C15? Over here we can see C15, the positive on the positive half of our power circuit, and the negative on the negative half of our power circuit. So it's a filter cap. This is what I use in my power filtering too, 100 microfarads. So I'm guessing, and it's, come on, let's be honest, it's an educated guess. And it would be ridiculous of me to try and criticise Fuzzdog for putting a 6 instead of a 5 there, but I'm guessing that that's what's happened. These are still the best kits that you can buy. So just be wary if you're wondering. You'll be left with C15. It goes in this position right here, and I just drop the positive through on the inboard side, negative through on the outboard side, and then that is it. I'm going to go ahead and just finish off the soldering on our caps. Next up, we're going to be adding in the wires for everything. I realise I haven't added in D3 and 4 and D1 and 2. That's because they're going to go on our switches. So D1 and 2 are our LEDs. They will go on one half of a switch, and then we'll have some other diodes on the other half of the switch, and we'll just send wires from the switch to the board. So what wires do we send? First of all, I like to use my soft silicone wire. Again, you can get this in the description from my Amazon affiliates links, so then you get the exact wire that I use. I use this because it's soft, malleable, and the coating doesn't burn, so it does not melt. Fantastic. And if you're wondering on a gauge size, I like between maybe 24 or 26 gauge, but it's completely up to you. Now I like to take a length like that, so wider than an A4 piece of paper. You don't need anywhere near as long as that, but just to be safe, I'm going to take that much because there's nothing worse than having to extend the wire once it's in the enclosure. And now we need 2 wires, one for each half of our diode set. And then of course we've got 2 diode sets, so we need 4 in total. So we take our 4 wires, and then because this silicone wire is so awesome and easy to work with, we can just put all 4 of them next to each other in a line and use our Nipex snips just to skin all 4 wires at the same time. Really easy. And then that way we can tin them all together, because this wire is stranded. If you have solid core wire, I really don't bother tinning it. In my electrical craft training for my degree, which is probably not worth the paper it's wrote on now, I suppose, but my electrical craft training, they taught us to to tin solid core wire. You really don't need to. I would suggest. So let's tin all of this. Now, 2 of them you need for a set of diodes. So if we take a look first at D3 and 4, all we need to do is run a wire from either side of these, because they're both joined together. That tag is joined to that tag, and this tag is joined to this tag. We could take one from this side and one from that side. It doesn't really matter. If you look on the bottom, no, because this is a multi-layer board, you can't actually see the, I thought we were going to see the trace. You can't. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go either side of D3, just because then it's closest to the edge of the board. No other reason. And all I'm going to do is put both of my wires through there, bend them outboard so then they don't fall out, and then I can just solder them in. Perfect. And then for the next set of diodes are LEDs, which is D1 and D2. They are over here. We can just do the same thing. Pick either D1 or D2, and we can simply, I mean, this side you can actually see them joined. So you pick either D1 or D2 and just take the wires from one of them. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to use D2 out, and they're going to then attach to our switch the other end. While I'm fitting them, I'm also going to attach wires for our input, our output, our voltage in, our ground in, and this LED. I'm going to attach a wire for that. I normally don't, but I'm going to use it this time. It means that I'll use a resistor on the board. I'm not too sure which one it is. I think this one, doesn't matter. Anyway, that's going to be the power supply to our LED. It's already got the current limiting resistor in there. In fact, it'll be on our drawing. It should have CLR next to the resistor name. You could increase that to make it dimmer, blah, blah, blah. You've heard me talking about it before. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in wires for the volume, the drive, and the focus, which I think is treble. But instead of bringing them off the top of the board like I am for the diodes, I'm going to take them from the underside of the board, just so then they're not like lying over the top of everything, especially in the case of this focus one. Now, actually, that presents a problem. If I take the wires from underneath, and I'm using the same colour wire, which I'm sure lots of you have took great pleasure in criticising me in the past before, as I don't colour code my wires. I won't know which is which. So what I'm actually going to do is go back on my words there, and I'm going to run the wires from the top, just so then when I'm wiring it in, I can see where each one's come from. That makes sense. Right, I'm going to crack on. There we have our snake's wedding complete. All the wires are attached to our board. Next up, we're going to move on to the clipping. So this is the mod section. Now, these are our 2 clipping switches. We're going to have our soft clipping and our hard clipping. So what are they going to be? Well, in the soft clipping section, we know that normally we're going to have these red LEDs. They're going to be symmetrical. So there's going to be one LED clipping one off, one LED clipping the other off. Now to go opposing that, so when we flip our switch, I'm going to have these. Check out these bad boys. These are British military spec germanium diodes, the CV7171s. They're massive. And you'll notice that A, they're bigger than the switch, but B, I've got 3 of them instead of 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 of them facing one direction, so you get twice the amount of forward voltage for clipping one half of the signal, and then 1 of them facing the opposite direction to get just 1 clipping the other half of the signal for asymmetrical clipping. So on our soft clipping switch, we're going to have symmetrical LEDs for higher headroom. We're going to have asymmetrical germanium clipping for a softer clipped, more, more harmonically rich tone because it's asymmetrical. Now, onto our hard clipping section. Normally, the hard clippers are the 1N4007s in a symmetrical fashion. They go straight to ground, and these are, abrupt, aggressive, sharp, whatever you insert tone words. But I'm going to switch them with some LEDs. They're going to be higher headroom, cleaner, smoother. They're going to have a later onset of clipping. So that's the higher headroom option. And I think between these, the 5mm LEDs and the extra setting for our germanium asymmetrical is going to be an awesome thing to have for this pedal. So how am I going to do it? Well, first of all, I'm going to separate out the two switches. And I'm going to start off with the easy one, which is the hard clipper. And I'll just put it through the hole on my pedal, just so then I've got somewhere to work from, because that stops the switch from moving around. And first things first, we're going to do our 1N4007s. So I'm just going to clean the legs a little bit. Like so. Because these are symmetrical, as long as they're pointing in opposite directions, it doesn't matter which one's pointing which way, if you like. So all I do is I bend the leg over, wrap it round the leg below it, and leave it there. And then same again for this one, bend it over, wrap it round the one below it, and there. And then I can just lay it down and give them a solder. I know I could have a handy grabber, or some people in the past have suggested that I use blue tack to hold these components down while I solder them. I just don't like that. I prefer to struggle. And do you know what I normally do? I normally pick the components up while it's red hot and burn myself. But it appears that I haven't this time, thankfully. Right, we snip off the excess and we're left with these two legs hanging down. So if we bring back our switch, now this is a question. Because I have my line on this pointing upwards, so when it's in the pedal, let's turn it over and show you. When it's in the pedal, I like the line that's on the switch to point upwards. So now what I've got to decide is, which position do I want, the normal switch and the mod switch, or do I want normal and mod? I think up is going to be normal, down is going to be mod, right? So up normal, which is our 1N4007s. So if up is normal, what happens is with this lever switch, if you push it up, it actually engages the bottom two lugs. Okay, so if I put that in that way round, I know the switch is pointing that way, so the bottom two lugs are in play, which means that I'm going to attach my diodes to the bottom two lugs. And that'll mean that when this is in the pedal, up will be normal, and to engage the mod, you press down. Doesn't matter which way round you put it, I suppose. You know, both sound options are available, but I don't know, I like messing with this stuff. What can I say? I like it to be in a certain way. And plus, when I come to the demo, it'll help me remember which way round they are. Because sometimes, whether you think it will or not, these mods don't make as much difference as you might want them to. But at least we'll be able to hear that and maybe adjust or whatever. So I'm going to solder both of them in. Now, if you're worried about dropping solder on the top of your pedal, you could either lay something on the top of it or just not use the top of your pedal and use something else. I've been doing this for an awful long time, and I'm not worried about marking the top of a pedal that's aged. It's got nitrocellulose lacquer on it, you know what I mean? So what difference does it make? Now, the other side of it is going to be our LEDs. Now, the important thing for the LEDs are our positive legs, our anodes, are the longer leg. So as long as we have one longer leg on one side and one longer leg on the other side, it's not going to matter. So instead of joining them together before the switch for these ones, what I like to do is just put them in. So there's one in that way. Ooh, if I don't drop it all the time, well done. So one in that way, and now this time I know that that side was the positive, so now this side's going to be the positive. That simple. What I could have done is like I did for the Randy Rhodes pedal, run these as eyes or something like that, and then the eyes would light up, because if diodes are hard clipping and you put LEDs in that place, they'll actually illuminate. So there's one for you if you fancy making like a light up picture, or even just have the LEDs on the top lighting up. That would be good. But for me, I'm making this pedal. Hopefully this gets to the Illegal Eagles. I'd love it if this pedal made it to the band, and I am going to reach out to them obviously, so hopefully it will. But what I don't want is this flashing at them while they're on stage. If by some miracle they happen to like it enough to use it on stage, I mean, that's a big if, innit, let's face it. But yeah, I wouldn't want it to be flashing at them on stage. So there's our hard clipping diodes in place. And they're going to go in that way round. Fantastic. Now on to the difficult one. Because it's going to be these diodes are bloody massive. So we're going to have to create something. I mean, let's see. If we put it inside the pedal, there's a massive amount of headroom above us. And if I put it in this position here, it's not going to foul. Well, maybe this position here, actually. It's not going to foul the jack coming in there, you know. So we'll see. We shall see. Right, what am I going to do? Because these are like ridiculously big. In fact, while we're here, let's check the forward voltage of these, because I haven't actually done that. So we put our fluke round to ohms, press the button twice, and that gives us diodes. And if we go either side, we can see that it's not conducting that way, but it is conducting that way. 0.64, that's massive for a germanium diode. It's so big. They're normally about 0.2 to 0.3, maybe 0.4 or a push. So that's massive. Just check that they're all the same. 0.62, yeah, good. And then this one here is 0.50. So that's the largest one. So I'll put that on its own, and these two can go this way around. So all I'm going to do is make sure that these are pointing both in the same direction, i.e. the flat face is to the left. And then I'm going to probably make them into a diamond by twisting these bits together. I mean, these legs are so thick, it's ridiculous. It really is. And then if I solder that in place, that'll give us one diode. I mean, these are quite considerable thicknesses, these legs. And I don't want to put too much heat in them, because they are vintage military gear, you know. It should hold up, but who knows. Now, if we use our fluke, obviously we're getting 1.067. I mean, it's moving because it's germanium, and heat and temperature and whatnot affect them. Snip off the excess. There's one part. Now, if we were to lie this diode across this way and solder it in place, that would be the other diode in. And you'll see, don't know if this will show up on camera, but on the left hand side there, it's kind of like a open tube that's got a leg put in and then soldered. So don't want to solder to the tube in case this bit opens up and it messes something up inside. So really I want to solder to just the leg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the diode is far enough over to the left that I'm soldering onto the leg. I don't know if that will make a difference, but it does seem like a silly thing to not do if I just can. So I'll move that over there. Good. Now this is kind of, I hate doing this, it's like balancing it on and then soldering it. But I can't see any other way of getting these on. It's so thick. In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tin them. There you go. Well done, Joe. And that's the difference. You tin something and it's easy. And what was I saying before about not tinning solid core wire? Well, these are that thick. You have to. Now, these two bits should, he says, just go together. There. Okay, so I'm going to snip off the excess legs of this one, because we only need two legs coming out of this structure to attach to our switch, because the legs are so thick I don't want to mess about. I mean, that looks a bit mental, doesn't it? So I'm going to take my flat nose snips and bend them in on themselves without fouling the diode. Like this. And then if we take our switch, we can kind of gauge how wide they need to be, which is not very wide. You can take a bite of it and just bend it straight. And then same with this one, bend it straight. There. Look at that for a contraption. That's asymmetrical military spec germaniums. Not even sure what year these are. They're going to fit through. Now look, this is another problem. They're not fitting through. So what I am going to do is cut them to length. And I'm going to take my flat nose snips flat nose snips, flat nose pliers, put the leg right in the back end of the jaw and then squeeze it flat. Right in the back end of the jaw, squeeze it flat. Hopefully this will go in then. So remember, our modified section of the clipping is going to point towards the line on our switch. So if you look at our switch, there's the line, and our modified section is going to go into that line. So into here. And there we are. Now, of course, if I put them in like that, they're going to foul the top. So I'm going to have to bend them up, but I'll solder them in first and then bend them up. This is borderline absurd, I know. I don't actually know how these sound. I bought these ages ago and I'm not sure I've had a chance to use them. Not to my recollection anyway. Right, there we are. So now we can use our flat nose pliers to kind of bend up. In fact, it's not even working because they're so thick. It's ridiculous. I've left a bit of leg in there. We can bend them up like a big telephone aerial or something, I don't know. And then when that goes in, it's going to be sticking out like that. I'm not sure which position I'm going to put it in yet, because we've got to get these in, of course. And will it foul them? No, it's nowhere near them. Oh wait, there, it's on the upper side. That's a lie. Do you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to flip these round and have the mod on the other side. Otherwise it's going to catch on there. There's no two ways about it. So the mod's going to have to go on the other side. Oh well, that's going to annoy me because I've now soldered the switches in a way that I don't like doing it, but whatever. Right, now onto the 3mm LEDs for our symmetrical soft clipping. Now again, as long as the longer leg and the shorter leg go in opposites. So right now the longer leg's on the left, so I'll put the longer leg of this one on the right. It doesn't matter which one goes where, because it is symmetrical. I'm really hoping this gives some more options and helps this pedal get the Eagles sort of tone. You know, Joe Walsh has like a very, very expressive tone, and I really hope that this helps. Hopefully the illegal Eagles, it gets to them and they can implement it and use it to get closer to Joe's tone. When I saw them live, they were actually playing Kempers, which is one of them legs isn't in, which is interesting because, I mean, talk about unconscious bias. There was nothing unconscious about my bias. Me and my father-in-law Glyn, who many of you have met, walked into Portsmouth Guildhall, and we were a bit late because we went for the beer first, and it took me forever to finish my Guinness. And when we got in there, there was just two Kempers on the stage and a load of guitars, and I was like, oh, come on, Kempers. I was so gutted. And then when they come out and started playing, talk about it not really mattering. And I know that we buy gear to make us feel better, so then we enjoy playing more, which then will make the show better. Great. But the show sounded fantastic. And they were using Kempers and what looked like real pedal boards. So actual pedals. And I'm hoping that this will really work with the Kemper. You'll have all this switchability to try and, like, you know, dial it into whatever the Kemper, like, IR they're using is. Anyway, enough on that. Now that we've got that, we've got our snake's wedding, we've got all of our parts, I'm going to go ahead and get everything populated in the enclosure. Next up is adding all the parts into the enclosure. This is just the mechanics of it. It's just simply putting the parts in the enclosure as per the instructions. Speaking of which, after seeing this build and after seeing the instructions, is anyone thinking about going on a Fuzzdog website and buying a honeybee kit? I'd love to know in the comments if you're planning on building this kit, or even if you've built any Fuzzdog kits in the past. Come to think of it, what other brands and what other kits can you buy? Because I know the guys out in the US can't get Fuzzdog kits. What do you buy out there, and what kits should I build next? Okay, so this is my snake's wedding. It's looking awesome, innit? As you can see, it's all in there. I've got some tape on the switch to stop it from getting messed up while I'm working. I haven't put my LED bezel on yet. I will put that on. It's going to be a gold one, funnily enough. Now, to work this out is going to be a bit mental. So it's all easy, like the switches is easy. But the one thing that's going to be awkward is the pots, because, let's have a look. On our drawing here, or on our drawing, on the Fuzzdog kit paperwork, you can see that the PCB is upside down, and this is how the pedals go. The pots go. This is the volume pot, frequency, gain. Now if I flip that upside down, and I keep an eye on just this pin here, flip it upside down, it's now on the outer side, which means that it aligns with this pot. So these three wires here coming off our PCB for the volume pot, let's double check that, yeah, volume pot, attaching the way that they are right there. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. And now same for our tone pot. If I go for the inboard side and I just flip it over in my head, it's now on the inboard side of the pedal still on this side, which lines up with this. So the volume and drive pots wire in the way that they actually sit. But if I look at this pot, it's facing the opposite way round. So if I flip this over, I may think it's that side, but it's not, it's the other way around. So I'm going to have to cross over. The two outside wires for this are going to cross over and attach to opposite pots. Easy peasy. So I'm going to do that first before I forget. And I'll also wire up all of these pots. And normally I try and get one line of wiring so I can cable tie it. It's all nice. But the way that this board's wired up, it's just not happening. I'm gonna have to run two wire lengths down there, and this one's gonna have to come down the center. Whatever, it's just the way it is. And I've also just noticed something that I hate doing, and that is attaching the op amp, while the PCB is in a pedal. Despise doing that. As we can see here, it is an OPA 275. It's a real nice op amp, this is. So we take it out of its foam, squeeze it in just ever so slightly, and then I take my flat nose pliers and I position it over the top of the socket. What I do is I get one side of the legs in place, make sure they're all in the socket holes, then check the other side, make sure they're in the socket holes. If they're not, I would use a screwdriver just to manipulate them in there, but it just so happens that they all are, and then just firmly press it down until it clicks in. Done. I prefer to do that when it's the PCB's out of the pedal and in my hand, but I completely forgot. There's all of our pots wired in. Next we're going to deal with our diodes. On the left hand side here you can see D1 and D2, and then on the right hand side here you can see D3 and D4. D1 and D2 are our soft clipping diodes. So I'm going to send these two wires round this cable loop here and up and attach to these two lugs here. It doesn't matter which one goes to which, because it really does. I mean, I suppose it does for this, because, you know, whichever way round this goes, one of these is going to clip, you know, twice as much on, say, the positive half or the negative half. I'm not too fussed about that. I think it's going to make minimum difference to us. If you disagree with that, please let me know in the comments. Let me know why. I'd love to learn why it makes a difference in music. But to me, whether it's you know, the positive or negative half, whatever. And then for this one, because they're both symmetrical, it's not going to matter. It's going to come up round this wiring loom here, quite short, straight up and connect to these two here. There we have both sets of diodes wired in. Next up, we're moving on to these wires here. So that will be our ground, our live, our input, our output to the circuit, which will go to the front two lugs here. And also the end here, our positive side of our LED, which is the longer side. If you're wiring this in, I highly suggest that you use the stuff that Fuzzdog gives you. So you get this drawing here that'll tell you how to wire in your little circuit. Or there's another drawing, if I can find it, this one here, that tells you how to wire in the switch if you just want to wire in the switch. I would just do it that way. It saves messing about. You don't have to mess about watching this video. I do wire them in a different way. And if you've watched my videos, you'll have seen how I wire them. That's all of our board wired up. It's starting to come in now. I've got the power going over here, is now in from the board. I've got my earth from the board coming up and matching with my jack. The earth, all I need to do to attach is one wire going from our earth connection on our jack across the tops of our input and output jacks. And that is earth done. Then we also need to add in our input and output wires. So the input here comes round this wiring loom and up and through to this pin, and then the output goes round the same wiring loom up and then to this pin. And then I'll loop across. This diode down here, the LED or on-off LED, is getting power from the board. And there's a 2.2k resistor, if I remember rightly, that is feeding this. So it's got its current limiting resistor. All I need to do is attach this leg round this wiring loom and then up to this tag here. And then that'll attach it to earth when the pedal's on. However, what I'm going to do is use this 1.5k resistor to add more current limiting. So we'll get in total 3.7k resistance, and that'll make the LED just slightly less bright. I still think that's going to be too bright because I do want this to make it to the Illegal Eagles and they play live, so I think it might be too bright still, but you know, we'll see. And I've got this, I bought this this resistor from my buddy over at Modulus Amplification to do an amplifier build. Didn't end up using it. That should work now, at least, at the very least. When we plug this in, we should get light on our LED. So here I am with the new guitar, ready to test it, and absolutely nothing coming out. So let's get the multimeter on the go. What I did do is I plugged it in, and when it was turned on, I touched the input cap and I could hear sound. Now if there's a problem with the pedal, very much doubt that the signal is going all the way through the pedal to the input cap. Listen to that. Don't know if that'll come on, but my torpedo cap there is making noise. If I touch the output cap, nothing. So that tells me that there's probably an issue with the way I've wired up these. So it's either this, the way that this is attached to that. There we go. Oh no. Yeah, so that's probably wired up the right way. And not sure. Oh, that's wired up the right way. Oh no, it's not, because they're connected. Because the pedal's off. So I've put the pedal on. The input here is it attached to the input. It's saying meg. But if I click it on, does it go on? Yep, so I know I'm getting a good connection. That means that the input isn't connected. But is the input connected to the output if I put these the wrong way around? It is connected to the output. So that tells me I think I've got these two wires the wrong way around. But is the output connected to the output like it should be? Is it some sort of short? It looks like we're getting, what, megohm? Okay, but then if we go over to our input, we can see that that's getting no, that's getting continuity. So what I've done is I've mixed these two wires up. So that's a simple fix. I'll get it done and then we'll get on to some sort of sound sample. Of course, I think this is the most crucial part. It is, of course, the knob choice. Now, the knob choice can make all the difference on how your pedal looks. And if a pedal looks good, people are going to want to put it on their board. It's just a simple fact. Whether you like it or not, or whether it's superficial or not, the knobs matter. If someone's on stage and they can't tell where the knob's set, that may be a problem for them. For me, as a bedroom player, it really, really doesn't matter. So I'd like to know in the comments, please, which one of the knobs that I've chose today would you choose if this pedal was yours? So now it's time for that awesome part. Which knobs would you choose? Now this one I'm really torn between because I love all the knobs that we're going to see now. I would absolutely love it if someone knew someone in the Illegal Eagles or someone connected to them and they could reach out to me and choose a set of knobs themselves. Happy to send this pedal anywhere in the world to them. I really do want them to get it because they inspired the build. Now, onto the knobs. We're going to go with a personal favourite of mine first. It is, of course, the brown cupcake knobs. I mean, come on now. They fit in with the gold hardware and with the Age Mermaid green nitrocellulose. I love the way it looks. It suits the pedal. You've got space to get in and touch these switches, which is great. I like them. But, you know, we use them a lot. These are my last ones of these, actually. I need to order more. But we use them a lot. Then we've got the Big Muff. Big Muff, yeah. The Russian Big Muff knobs. Black. I thought black was more appropriate than white. You know, these look cool. I love them. A little bit hard to get into the switches. Maybe black isn't as good as the brown. Which kind of puts a damper on the next knobs, which are the extra nailed black cupcake knobs. Again, I love these knobs. They're fantastic. Same ones as on a brown face Fender amplifier from the 60s. Love it. Now, I don't know. What do you think? You can get into the switches, they look good, but I still think out of these two, the brown cupcakes are just better. Even though these ones are more nailed and I like the look of them, I think out of them, I'm picking the brown cupcakes. So we're going to rule out any of the black knobs. They're going to get ruled out. And then last up is a bit of a weird one. These like PRS style knobs, basically. I don't know what you would call them, really. And these are pretty cool. Although I haven't got pointers for the bottom of them, which is a bit of a damper. And another thing is, I suppose because of the pointers, you can't see where they're set properly. And the switches are a little bit harder to get into because, you know, I mean, I'm not going to push them right down because they'd be a nightmare to get off. I don't know. I'm torn. Because I actually think that these will look really good with this pedal. They just fit in with the vibe of it. Don't know. So let me know in the comments, what would you choose out of these two? Because these are probably the only, or any others that you've seen me use lately. But out of these two, what would you choose if this pedal was yours? And now we're on to the sound sample. Of course, I can't play like the Eagles. I'll just get that out there now before someone else points it out. Thank you for that one guy who happens to feel like they should tell me that I can't play like the band that I'm trying to aim for. So enlightening. Now, before we get on to that, I'd like to just say thank you to everyone who watches my videos. But I'm still getting 70% of people who watch who aren't subscribed. If you could just press that subscribe button, you'll get me to 10,000 by the end of the year or 8,000 by the end of the month. That would be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so check out the guitar I'm going to be using today. This is my Lenson Guitars Beast. Look at it. It's amazing. Right, and this is the clean tone. Just listen to that. And that is the pedal in its standard form. So let's start getting into the switches. That sounded less aggressive to me, I don't know about you. Both switches. Get the gain up there. What happens if we had a range master? Clearly I can't play like the Eagles. Now the question is, what does it sound like with different guitars? So let's get a datum with this guitar. I think we're going to do it in the mod mode for both of them, and I'm just going to blast everything up, and I'm going to add in just a little bit of range. You can hear there's a bit of background there because of all the lights in here. Fair enough, but we've got a little bit of range in there. That's it without. In fact, we'll do it with range and without. Let's compare this to some of my other guitars. Here it is without the range master. Let's get some range in there. So with all the settings the same on the pedals, this is with the Oasis Les Paul. Now some range master. And now with fake red. Let's get the range master in there. Oh, listen to that. The Monty's pickups in this thing are just alive. Wow, unmistakably Goldie. I mean, come on, just look at this thing. It is literally a beast. And then with the Sunbear humbucker in the neck. Let's get some range master in there. Oh man, listen to that. Let's try some different tunes now that we've got Goldie on the go. Let's hear some P90 tunes in the neck. Bit cleaner. On the standard settings. I'm going to use the guitar's neck volume to clean it up. In fact, maybe turn the gain up and use the neck volume to clean it up. I'm just going to mess about with the humbucker volume and see if we can get a bit of clean up on the go. It amazes me that people watch this far into my videos. If you're still watching at this point, please type illegal eagles in the comments just so I can get a gauge of how many people watch this far.